friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Cutting with the Medieval Sword, a book by Mike Edelson. A quick disclaimer for you guys watching this. This book was actually gifted to me by Mike Edelson himself. You can actually see in the cover, right there, it says, "Brittany, use this wisely." Now, this was gifted to me, but I made no promises to Mike at all about reviewing his book. He actually, I don't think, even knew that I was going to do this. He'd just given it to me out of interest in furthering my practice within cutting. And so he hasn't paid for this at all. This is just my honest review of a book that was gifted to me. So a little bit of history about Mike Edelson. We had actually met many years ago, I want to say 6 years ago now, at a event in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And he had gone there exclusively for cutting, because at that time he was the cutting guy. And Mike is usually credited with having brought cutting within the mainstream of the HEMA community. And I think without his efforts, we really wouldn't be where we are today for like cutting and test cutting and cutting tournaments, things like that. He put in a huge amount of effort to bring cutting into the mainstream and to make sure that cutting was going in a direction that I think was safe and that I believe was serious. Cutting with the Medieval Sword is exactly what it sounds like. It's a very apt title. You're literally just getting a book that shows you how to cut with the medieval sword. The title is very self-explanatory for what kind of book it is and what the book is about. This book actually came out in 2017, so it's not a new book by any means, and I'm actually really surprised it didn't get more attention considering how excellent it is as a resource. I want to point out the cover image, which is actually from one of the Talhofer manuscripts. This is an artist's rendition of it that I believe was done by Mariana Lopez, and this is one of my favorite images in the Talhofer manuscript. And I love that it showed up on the cover of this book. So what you get is a hardcover book with lots and lots of images, and the images are color. And I think that's what I really liked about it actually, was the images in the book really do help explain a lot of the concepts within it. For example, the image here is showing the difference between tip leading and tip trailing. And I say this a lot to my own students, and I'm sure any instructors that are watching this probably know exactly what this is referring to in terms of leading with the tip. Lead with the tip, lead with the tip, not with the hands. This really helps display exactly what that means. This book is a literal how-to, a literal manual. There's so much detail just about the biomechanics and all the fine details of how the sword should move, how the body should move, or how it shouldn't move. And that's what makes this really valuable, is I do believe that pretty much anybody could pick up this book, give it a full read, and then be able to have a very solid foundation for cutting, even if they are a beginner. And that's why I really do recommend this for anybody who's interested in cutting. This will cover so much stuff, and good biomechanics will often keep you safe with sharp swords as well. One thing that really stood out to me as an excellent part of this book was the little banners or headlines that show up for key concepts. For example, under the edge alignment section, you can see the banner here at the top, and what this does is it shows up every now and again, but it just has a quick summary of the concept, and I find it really helpful because you can make quick references, and also you can go through the book and just read it cover to cover, and then the second time you go through it, you can kind of just go to those little pieces as little blips, little reminders. Not only does the book show you how to do things, but it also gives you drills. So right in the book itself, there's such things as edge alignment drill number 1 or edge alignment drill number 2, and it gives you different ways that you can sort of self-teach and practice what's in the book itself. And I think that that makes this a really holistic type of resource if you want to try getting into cutting. Cutting with the Medieval Sword also goes so far as to give you a handy guide for choosing your sharp sword, which is a very personal choice, but I think a lot of people maybe need a little bit of guidance in that because there are bad swords out there. There absolutely are. And then of course there are things to consider with different types of swords. So you have different lengths, different shapes, different cross sections, all sorts of variations. And this book really gets you a good foothold on how to make that choice for yourself. Part of the reason too that I also think it's very holistic is because not only does it show you how to use a sword, how to train with it, how to choose it, but it also covers really important things that a lot of people don't talk about in the community, such as sharpening and maintenance. And if you're going to be the owner of a sharp sword, you really ought to know how to take care of it. A lot of people think that they buy a sharp sword and right out of the box they can cut with it. That's not entirely untrue, but usually a factory edge, as we call it, is not something that is ideal for cutting with. Obviously, you don't want to ship something that's like shaving sharp. It is absolutely a skill that everybody should have. However, the first time you start sharpening or learning to sharpen, I don't recommend trying it out the first time on your brand new Albion, for example. Kitchen knives are usually a pretty good place to start learning. And if that isn't enough for you, there's a whole thing on making your own cutting stand. I get asked that question a lot, is how did you make your cutting stand? Well, there is a guide here, and if for no other reason you buy Cutting with the Medieval Sword, get it for the cutting stand. Like, I find that some of the most valuable information because it also transfers over into how to make your own pel. And if you're clever enough, you can have your cutting stand and your pel be the exact same thing. I know I've already said it, but I can't stress enough that this is probably one of the most underrated books that is currently available in the sword community. Not just for HEMA, but for anybody that does training with swords or, I guess, sword-like objects. This is amazing, and I really hope that it eventually gets the recognition it deserves because it is probably one of my top 10 favorite books for historical European martial arts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I sure do hope that you guys find this book in your possession soon. And as always, thanks again for watching.